Okay, and welcome. This is going to be a very relaxed and casual live stream. All we're going to do is we're going to go through the manual thought process of what you would need to create an editorial prompt that is in likeness to a specific AI model that you have in mind. Okay, so in front of me, I've got this long passage of text, and it reads like 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, right? It's very long. And there's a lot of principles that are followed as part of M.U.S.E. If you're new to that, you can click on my channel homepage and there's a whole playlist that I've created. So you can, of course, know these timeless principles and apply them to your prompts. But suffice it to say that it's very structured and tiered in terms of what we cover. So first off, we want to focus on describing the type of image that we want. So it's a fashion editorial photograph, as indicated by there. And then also we want to then describe the angle of the image. Okay, so like full body. So we want to see the whole subject, front angle as well, and then the subject in question. So in this case, Russian woman, beautiful Russian woman, stood inside a darkly lit photo studio with a slim figure measuring. Now, measurements are really important. They don't always do well when you use it with, like, let's say, Midjourney as such. You know, I was getting very mixed results with Midjourney, and it wasn't the best. When I was using it with free pick, it was better with adhering to it, especially with the Nano Banana model. The Nano Banana model, by the way, is the best model compared to like a Midjourney version 7 or even their Mystic 2.5 Fluid model. You know, when you start to use the Nano Banana model, it really adheres to everything really well. So anyways, getting back to the point of using measurements. When you use measurements, it does really well in terms of adhering to, of course, the waist, the hip, and the bust measurements. Because typically what happens in an hourglass figure is the bust is out. So it's like the bust is basically that broad part just under the armpits there. So that's out at like 34 inches. Then you have the, I think the hips. No, sorry, the hips are the broad part there. Then the waist is inward. Yeah, there you go. That's like 24 inches. And then the waist is outward. Sorry, the hips are outward. And that's like 34. So you get 34, 24, 34, okay? And that adhered to it really well there. Okay. So going back to here. Okay, so then you like describe that, okay? Measuring 34, 24, 34 inches, standing in at 5 feet 9 inches tall. Okay, then you describe the age of the subject. So let's say like she's in her early 20s. She has an oval shaped face, long neckline. Okay, so longer necks are more elegant. I know, like, for instance, in Asian cultures, I don't know exactly which particular, country is well known for that, but they have like neck rings to try and elongate their necks, right? So it has a cultural tie in there as well. So that's just an aside that I thought I'd bring up there. So yeah, you have a longer neckline, okay? Then almond-shaped light grey coloured eyes. So it's adhered to that well. It's got that almond-shaped light coloured grey eyes. And blonde hair and tied into a bun with a straight nose and full lips. Now, typically what happens in editorial photo shoots is you have much more angular faces. And angular faces could be square, they could be oval-shaped. Rarely they're heart-shaped, but mostly they're oval-shaped because oval-shaped type of jawlines and just general face shapes are much more versatile in terms of what you can do with them and how you can use lighting to great effect. Okay, so there's something to pay attention to there. And then elegant dress that accentuates her curves with directional side lighting, creating sharp contrast of angular shadows. So I'm not sure if you've seen my community post latest that I posted today, but within it, I had something called V-flats. I included V-flats. Now, what V-flats are essentially are panels that light can pass through to create very harsh and angular types of lighting. Okay, so V-flat lighting. Now, this is like leaning more into like photography techniques, which is usually what I find to be very helpful in making sure that your prompt is a lot more refined than it otherwise would be. So when we get the use of V lights, like let's do V light editorial lighting. This basically, you see this, like these panels. So directional light, which would just be one like key light, the main light, passes through on an angle with a V flat. So it goes through the gap of those particular flats. and that creates very harsh symmetrical lighting there. So we can see here, yeah, that these light streaks are there because they're passing through a particular gap within the panels. So that's like that. That's the use of V flats there, okay, being used. So you can see it's kind of adhered to it there with the Nano banana model. We can tell like it's angular and it's cut off on the top and there, so it's adhering to that really well. Okay, so that's an example there of V flat. Now we go into lastly the posture, okay, of the subject. So she's leaning very subtly back with her hair gently blowing, creating a dynamic feeling. Because the way you can also tell that an image is AI based is if everything is very static, there's no dynamism in the image. So when you introduce little things like hair tendrils, which are like these little parts of the hair blowing with the wind, it creates a feeling of dynamism and it makes ultimately the image feel more human than it otherwise would feel. So that's really important to incorporate those subtle elements into your prompts there. And then she has her arm resting on her hips in an elegant way, so like this, right? So there's a bit of attitude there. Now, this is part of E, okay? When we're talking about the posture, gaze, and expression, I've just touched on one part of essence, which is the posture here, and a little bit of the expression as well, but mostly just the posture. In that, like, it makes your image feel more human, okay, than it would be. And this ties back into ancestral roots of 300,000 years, where a lot of us would be mirroring the reactions of how we would feel in our tribe. Okay, so this was before the advent of language itself, and this is where the need to read people's emotions was really important. So that's why we want to have those limbic based associations within our prompts and have them ultimately outputted within our images that we create, because it really taps cognitively into the limbic part of our brain. Now, you may be wondering, why on earth would we need this? The reason being is because when we have strong emotional aspects in our image, it makes us want to take the next decision. Now, in an e-commerce store, that would typically be going through to like a product catalog page where we'd see a whole host of other products of what the model is wearing, or go into the product detail page, PDP, to try and get the purchase over the line, right? If you're a company. So yeah, that's it. That's been today's live stream, a very short one. I hope you've had some value taken away from this live stream. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I do always do my best to respond back to every single comment I receive. And likewise, if you haven't already, feel free to check out the playlist that I said at the start of this live stream that will actually walk you through step by step every single part of the M.U.S.E framework that you need to know so you can get up to speed in no time at all. My name is Vay, and until next time, you've been watching AI Evolved, and peace.